We're not gonna get away with this, are we? Come on, pull. There. Together again. Sort of.
Hello and welcome to the next installment in my pseudo review first impression show, Copper to Drop It. With the first episode, we tackled a series and genre that I'm quite familiar with. You can watch that here. I believe that last year's installment, Call of Duty Ghosts, had taken the series, shoved it so far up its ass that we would need the world's largest colonic to return the series to former glory. That was a fun one. But this time around, we do something completely different, and we tackle a game and genre that I typically would avoid because, well, to put it simply, I'm fucking trash at them. Transistor is a narrative-driven action strategy RPG game. Yeah, I just do a whole lot of genres together that probably don't mix very well, but that's Transistor. It starts with the muted protagonist Red and her talking sword, the Transistor.
The empty set. It's closed for good, isn't it?
Red is a famous singer beloved by all in the technology-run metropolis of Cloudbank. Cloudbank is a democracy wherein the citizens vote on everything from the weather.
Wish it was raining. Cover your tracks. Rain's not even on the ballot.
To the next day, to which nigga getting his dick sucked. You get the idea. The Camerata are a group of elite citizens tasked with carrying out the will of the people. But one night, the Camerata attempt to assassinate Red and fail when a man takes the blow. The game begins right then and there. Now I know that was a lot to take in, but I barely even scratched the surface when it comes to the story and the atmosphere of this game. Enough about the plot, let's talk gameplay, let's talk the meat and potatoes of this game. Though Transistor is a narrative-driven game, it is no slouch in the gameplay department at all. Deep, highly customizable gameplay is something that Transistor does great. Along your journey of trying to figure out just what the hell is going on, you will fight various robotic-like creatures called the Process. Fighting them will give you XP and XP will level you. Leveling will grant you new functions. What is a function? I'm getting to it, don't worry about it. A function in layman's terms is a skill, because I can go a little bit deeper, but I don't want to spoil it. These skills can be used in 3 different ways: as an active skill, a passive, or an upgrade to a skill that you already have equipped. There are also these cool things called limiters. Limiters act as difficulty enhancers with experience bonuses attached to them. You feeling the game too easy? Stack up a bunch of limiters. That'll probably make it harder. Too hard? Take off all your limiters. This is an ingenious system that allows for dynamic difficulty scaling as the game goes on. With these different ways of varying up gameplay, there are literally hundreds of ways you could tackle each fight, and the game gives you an incentive to use the functions and limiters in different ways by giving you a little bit more about the lore and the characters every time you do so. And not everything about this functions and limiter system is done well. For one thing, the menus are clunky as all hell. Like, oh my god, it's terrible. It's like my room. You can't do anything. When you first use the menu, you're kind of confused. It took me a while to figure out that there were even passive slots. I had no idea that there were passive slots because the game does a terrible job of explaining this to you. Now let's move away from the RPG elements of the game and more into the actual combat. The combat of the game is split between a kind of turn-based strategy system called the turn, where you can freeze time to plan out a series of moves to be executed in hyperspeed at the expense of not being able to use your skills during the cooldown of this, and a real-time combat system where skills have no inherent cooldown. It's pretty self-explanatory. The problem with this is by the middle of the game, it becomes far too dangerous to ever use real-time combat. I mean, you're just gonna die if you do. But by the end of the game, it becomes press space, plan out a turn, run around like a chicken with its head cut off hoping that you don't get killed. One of my other gripes with the combat is when you die, instead of dying, you actually lose one of your skills, one of your functions. So basically, you just lost a skill and you can't use it. You can't regain that skill until you visit these things called access points. You have to visit a certain amount of access points to regain use of that skill. But the problem is, when you build a loadout, you build a specific playstyle because this is a strategy game. You're building a playstyle around your skills. So when you lose one of them, you typically just want to start over anyway because that one skill is so crucial to your arsenal. Playing with one or more of your skills missing makes you feel really gimped. You feel like a dog who's missing one of its legs. At that point, you just want to hit the retry button. All rants aside, Transistor is a very elegant game, from its stunningly beautiful 2D hand-drawn aesthetic to its superb voice acting and amazing soundtrack. Here, just take a listen. Transistor is a work of art. It's an intelligent game that asks more from its players. It's intelligently vague, I guess you could say. While being central to its identity, it's its biggest crux. Transistor is a game that has an idea and it runs with it. And if you're not down, well, you're probably never going to be down. I'm not gonna say that I was drawn into the game immediately. I played about an hour, thought it was cool, but I don't know if it was because of the combat is not something that I usually enjoy, or if it's because the game was so vague that they weren't giving me enough to want to continue on. I dropped it for about 2 weeks, but then I picked it back up again. And I didn't drop it until I beat it. And the moment I beat it, you can start the new game plus mode called Recursive. And you know what I did? The moment I beat the game, I clicked that. I started Recursive. I played about 2 or 3 hours of Recursive before I even dropped the game. It was that good. I couldn't end the review of this game without mentioning its length. While people say they beat it around 5 hours, I myself took 8. Maybe it's because I'm trash at the game, maybe it's because I spent several hours in this hub area that you can enter from back doors scattered about Cloud Bank. This hub world was a place to take a break from the action, but mostly to house challenges for speed, survivability, performance, and planning. These challenges are not only fun and engaging, they are great practice, and they reward the player with a piece of original music from the game's soundtrack and experience. These challenges, along with playing the game over in its new game plus mode that I mentioned earlier called Recursive, where they random up the encounters and allow you to keep all of your functions from your previous playthrough, I can say that Transistor was worth my $20 at 14 hours played. Transistor is a work of art that should be experienced by everyone. The music, aesthetic, and story are enough for me to recommend this game on their own. I suggest you cop this game for an intelligent experience like no other.